of you already. I'm the director of a company called SSR, a private training company. We train people to work in the music and media industries. I'm here today not to talk specifically about SSR. I'm going to show you a short DVD, which I hope you won't find boring, but it just gives you a little bit of context from which I'm coming in terms of what our college does. And then just to talk generally about this sort of, a little bit of an interesting time in which private providers are entering the FE and the HE market, and some of the perhaps potential and positives about that, but equally, some of the challenges and maybe some of the pitfalls and some of the natural sort of wariness that might lie with exactly who are these private providers. Are they to be trusted? Are they something that we can equally put in front of our young people as a possible option and a pathway? And how can you as careers advisors be sort of mindful about what those private training providers are all about? So I'm here to talk in a very general sense about that private sector and perhaps give some ideas of some of the kite marks and some of the things that maybe you can look out for that might help you in terms of understanding how the private sector works. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a short presentation on SSR so you understand that. In terms of me, just a little bit about me, my background is in your world. I am from education and training, so I was a history teacher in the secondary school sector, progressed through, became a head of sixth form, and then progressed to become a deputy head in a senior secondary school. I then made the decision to come out of that sector and enter this company. This company that I work for is a family business. It was started by my brother in 1980. We began as a commercial recording studio in the back streets of Manchester in 1980, when a funny thing was happening in the music business, and that funny thing centred in Manchester. My brother set up rehearsal studios, got linked in with Tony Wilson, and the first band that came down to use us was the Smiths. Stone Roses followed after that, and we helped launch their career. So our background is in that commercial sector. My brother then set up a very small training wing in '84. We had 12 students, and those students were working with the Stone Roses, and a sort of model developed of people who would be training working alongside the people who were genuinely working in the industry. So we had a commercial wing and a training wing, and those two wings merged together in a very creative, dynamic way. So we made our way so that by 2009 we won a Business of the Year award for the contributions that we have made to the creative industries and the quality of the training that we provide. We have over 500 students who are training with us in Manchester, and on the invite of our industry partners with whom we work extremely closely, we were asked to come down to London. So we've now set up a small centre in Camden in a piano factory, and we work very closely with the creative partners that we have now in London. We also have an international campus that is opening in Jakarta. So my background is in education and training, nothing to do with sound engineering other than I like a good tune, but I've been able to bring my expertise into the company. We work with the industry. We have a number of universities and FE partners with whom we work co-delivering degree and BTEC courses, and I guess that's where a lot of my expertise has been brought to bear. So I'm just going to show you a little bit about SSR, and then I'm just going to talk generally to you about really the sort of pros and cons, if you will, of the private sector. Okay, so here we go. This was made and produced by our own students. Okay, so I've not got a PowerPoint, so I'm just here to talk to you, and I'd like to make this as informal as possible. So I'd like to make this as informal as possible, so that you know, I'll maybe talk a little bit and say what do you think and what are some of your questions and queries about aspects of how the private sector works. So I'll sort of start with a bit of a question really. How many of you, I would imagine most of you, are familiar with the implications of the white paper and what the government proposals have been around the role of private providers in further and higher education? Yeah? Put your hand if you sort of know about this white paper thing. Okay, well, it's not too bad because they're pulling away from it because the NHS is taking up a bit of time. So they decided that it really wasn't a good idea to push forward fully with the white paper. And I, as the director of a private training provider, am delighted that they have done so. What the government was proposing, I think, was potentially quite dangerous, which was to give private training providers degree awarding powers and to try and make the private sector become private universities, very much along the American model. I have to say, I think that's a potentially dangerous route. And I think the government have been quite mindful to really come away from that. So that has gone off the agenda, and I think will stay off the agenda for quite some time. What, however, is on the agenda, and this is blind to party politics because the Labour Party are pretty much on the same page as well, which is that the private sector can have a positive contribution to make in terms of offering options and alternative pathways to young people, whether coming into our area, which is music and media, whether it's theatre makeup, whether it is in aspects of business and management and acting and drama. There's a whole host of particular, very vocational areas where the private sector can have a role to play. So, irrespective of which political party may be in government, that reality, I think, is here, and here to be developed and strengthened in a way that is positive for young people. And to some extent, the ground rules are the same. You have to pay now to go to anything, certainly aged 18 and above. There is a cost. Now, we might not like that. We might have all benefited ourselves from going to university and not having to pay for any of that. That reality isn't going to change under the next government, should it be a Labour government. It is not going to change. The only things that might change around it might be costs, but the reality is young people have to pay now for their higher education. I do think, and I say this as a mother, that does bring some benefits in terms of what young people as clients and customers are now looking for and what they are demanding from their higher education routes. And I think it's been quite a wake-up call to a number of institutions to think about the quality of the education that they're providing and, most importantly, employability outcomes and where those young people are going to progress to. And I think that's a very mindful question to be put in front of all HE providers. So in that sense, I embrace that change, and I think as a former head of sixth form, I'm delighted in a way that we're all having to think about that. So that's not going to change. So some issues might lie around, and you might want to ask me about that later. Well, how do people fund themselves into private providers? How does that work? Well, we can for sure talk about that. But before we do, it's just to talk about what is the nature of what the private providers can offer. And I think what is key to that is in certain vocational applied areas, private providers live and fall by those students. There is generally no other funding streams. There is nothing else coming into those colleges other than the price that the student brings. So in our company, and we're not unusual, our students are our clients. And we use that term in a very clear and straightforward way. They are our clients, and those clients have to be trained properly, supported properly, nurtured properly, and leave our institution with a good story to tell about how they have been supported and how they have been enabled to acquire work in the career of their dreams when they leave. And unless our clients leave us with that experience, we as a company cannot exist. We cannot possibly continue to attract people to our colleges. So good colleges are mindful of those things and are careful around that service and provision. So the colleges that set themselves up tend to be incredibly industry linked and industry savvy. They are linked to the potential companies, organisations, where their students will progress to. So the links with industry are a core to what those colleges are about. Those colleges tend to specialise in those areas, so the strength of those connections are very explicit. They're not having to think about diluting into other areas that maybe they're not necessarily leaders in, that they've not necessarily had that much experience in. Private providers tend to have tutors who are experts in their chosen field. They are people who actively work in those industries, who can bring current professional practice into the colleges to inform the curriculum, to inform content, to inform delivery, and to inform what processes those young people need to understand. So the industry connections that wrap around those colleges are incredibly powerful and are paramount to the survival and the integrity of those institutions. And any young person looking to go to a private provider should be looking very clearly at those industry connections and the employability outcomes of previous students who've gone to the college. So the vocational aspect, the industry links are incredibly important. But above and beyond that, there are ways in which you can look for quality kite marks to our institutions. And one of them, and it is obviously to whom we belong, but it is the best because I researched it very carefully, is an organisation called BACS, the British Accreditation Council. Now, BACS was set up in 1984, and they've been heavily involved. They've been informing the white paper, they're consulted by the government of all political parties about private providers, and BACS actively helped the border agency identify bogus colleges. We as a sector are concerned about bogus colleges. We as a sector do not want bogus colleges. We do not want colleges that are taking money off young people, exploiting them, maybe even closing up and reopening somewhere else, having never bothered really with the quality of the training or the outcomes, because they've moved on, given themselves a different name, reconstituted themselves. When I live and breathe from Manchester, and there are areas around us where it horrifies me to see a college that closes down and sets up, a couple of months later, call itself the West Lincoln College, and it's on the A6 leading to our college, and it's terrible. So BACS is very active in rooting out those sorts of institutions, and they represent a very small percentage of those private providers. But those sorts of bogus colleges will not have proper external verification, and BACS, carrying the BACS signature is a very important way. BACS work like Ofsted or QAA. BACS come in with a team of HE inspectors, and they inspect, and they go into your lessons, they will observe your teaching, which actually a lot of universities get away without much observation of teaching. We don't. We observe our teaching all the time. Our tutors are at the chalk face of what we do. If our tutors aren't right, then nothing is right. So we inspect internally, but BACS inspect annually all our lessons. They check all our notes, what we're doing, they check our career outcomes, and they talk with panels of students about what is actually going on within SSR. Now that, to me, is a very important way of us being sure that what we are delivering is of the right standard, and that what we are doing, like any good leader of any institution, you want your critical friends and you want that feedback, and you want to know if the messages that you're seeing are right and are being verified by other people. So to look for that sign of BACS is extremely important. The other areas that I think are important are to look for what sort of accreditation do these courses carry. Now in some ways it's a sort of mixed message that I'm sort of going to give you, because for us certainly as SSR, we have been running for 30 years. For 30 years we have simply given students at the end of our course a certificate that we issue for ourselves. That certificate is a passport for our students to get into work, otherwise we would not have survived. So for us, SSR is a brand name within our industry. The industry says, where have you trained? And if they say SSR, they go, right, okay, we know. But for some young people, and particularly with the changing climate of tuition fees, and thinking about where they want to train and how they want to train, whether they want to train for 3 years, whether they want the student experience, then accreditation can take on a different importance and significance. So Some institutions, ours included, we have now had our courses externally accredited. And there are a number of external bodies who work with institutions like ours, and they will come in and they will inspect your course, and then they will moderate your work, look at your teachers, make sure that everything's right, and then they will accredit if they think it is appropriate. We work with something called the NCFE, which some of you might have heard of. There are a number of organisations. We work with the NCFE. So the NCFE have accredited our courses at level 5 and level 6, and we're currently submitting modules to take it up to level 7. So some institutions may carry some partnership working with a body like the NCFE to accredit. Can I stress to you, and I say this again as a former deputy head and head of sixth form, it's not the be-all and the end-all. I know it is in our world, and I know of the world from which we came, and it's important to me. I've got my honours degree. That matters a lot to me as the first in my family to do so. But in many industries, it doesn't necessarily represent everything. It really, really doesn't. Being familiar with the organisation that delivers the training is actually what matters in a lot of industries. But to carry that accreditation as an optional gives you, as careers teachers, an idea that, okay, maybe these guys are actually delivering something that is of a standard, is there, and it's been recognised and accredited as such. For our students, it's not compulsory. We say to them, do you want to do the accreditation or not? If you do the accreditation, they have to do some extra lectures and a few essays. But they don't have to. 50% of them are doing it, 50% are not bothering. And for us, it doesn't matter. The outcomes for those students in terms of getting into work will be exactly the same. But for some young people, particularly the younger age group, the 18, the 19, who might well want that official thing for them, and certainly for parents, it's there as an option. So for you, that could be something, again, that is worth considering to say to the people you're advising, check out and see if they carry any external accreditation. But don't say because they don't, that means they're rubbish. That doesn't necessarily work as a corollary. It doesn't necessarily work like that. But it's one to consider. What I think perhaps is of equal or more significance is, do the courses carry some industry recognised accreditation? Are there some aspects of the training that do carry a kite mark within the industry? So for us, for example, we deliver training in particular software from Apple. We are an Apple centre. We are an Apple registered centre for education. So when our students emerge with our diploma, they also come out with certificates from Apple to say that they have been trained by certified instructors and have attained a certain standard in that software. Now, that can work in other parts of the private sector as well, that there are some industry recognised certifications. So, for example, if any of our young people went to, say, offer themselves, let's say at Abbey Road, and we have had students who've gone to Abbey Road, they will say, what's your level in Pro Tools? And they will say, well, I'm certified at 201, or I'm certified at 210. Brilliant. Okay, brilliant. That means a lot to recording studios to know what level of Pro Tools people are certified in. So checking to see what sort of industry, and they will know what that is. The people going into theatrical art or drama art should get savvy around what some of those industry qualifications are actually all about. So recognising that is also equally important. I'll sort of wrap up in a couple of minutes. The other things I think that can work well in the private sector is, along with the industry recognition and links and specialisations, are the delivery models that private providers can work with. So we, as a private provider, we deliver our courses in the day and in the evening, so there's a choice of which lectures they come to. We are open 7 days a week. We open till midnight. So our students can book in to come and do their work in the studios, which are in effect their libraries, at times that suit them. We work very flexibly. Most of our students don't really like coming to studios at 10 o'clock in the morning. They like rocking on till late at night. So they're our clients. We work with our clients and we work with what works for them. And then, sort of linked to that, our courses, as indeed other private providers, we get through much more quickly. We don't tend to have a long summer vacation. We work all year. We give our students 2 weeks off in the summer, 2 weeks off at Christmas. Other than that, they're in and they're working and they're getting through their courses. So our level 5 and level 6 courses are delivered in 18 months or 2 years. So I wouldn't call it fast tracking because I don't believe in too much fast tracking. You need to dwell a bit in your course. You need time to absorb and time to experience it. But 18 months, 2 years for some young people feels right. It feels right for them to be, in effect, if we think back, if we went to university, within your faculty, within your area of specialism, do you really get to know students who are working in computer science? I didn't. Are the people who come through SSR and other similar institutions, they want to be around like-minded people. They want to be surrounded by people who are into it in the way they're into it. And for some of them, the idea of engagement in a big university with a big mass of thousands of people doesn't appeal. And certainly for the students who come to us, although 500 sounds big in the private sector, it isn't if you compare it to an FE college or a university. And in London, you know, our capacity will be about 75. We've got 35. We opened in March, and we've got 35 students. And 70 to us feels about right. 20 per intake. I know every single student by name. I know everything about them, and I know what it is they want to do. And that smallness of the institution can also work for some students in a more appropriate way than getting lost in a very big institution where they're not sure where people are that are similar to them in their outlook and their interests. So for me, that's also an important way that private providers can be an interesting option for some young people. And hence, I think when you look at dropout rates, which is another, I think, sort of quality mark, in a good private college, there will be a limited dropout rate. Now, at universities and colleges, and for all sorts of understandable reasons, widening participation, all sorts of things like that can mean that lots and lots of people are taken onto university courses, and there's a risk factor as to whether they will fully engage and sustain. So to a certain extent, dropout is an obvious corollary of widening participation. It sort of can work out that way. But in a private provider, it shouldn't be like that. It should be that it's a very definite decision to be in that institution, and that institution should have really ensured that that was an appropriate pathway for those students. So dropout rates is also significant. I'm going to stop there. I've sort of said a bit, and I don't know if any of that sort of feels interesting or relevant, and sort of invite you really to say, are there any things about what I've said or anything differently that you'd like to know about? Yeah. Yeah.
Fees will have gone up for next year
Yeah.
at universities. How would a private organisation compare?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, we deliver degrees in our Manchester campus, so I'm very much aware of what those tuition fees look like, and on average we all know it's 9k a year, and it is 3 years to get the honours degree. For the courses that we offer, to get the equivalent, say level 6, the honours degree, the equivalent of it doesn't carry BSc or BA, it's level 5, level 6 certification. We're always clear about that. The cost to do it with us at the moment is £12,500 for the 2 years. Now, in terms of funding that, our students come from 3 different situations. One, either parents will fund it. Secondly, they will pay through instalments because of the flexibility model, students do work. So some of them will work and pay it off in instalments on a monthly basis. And the third route is probably the one you know, the professional career development loan through the banks, where they get the loan and then they have 5 years to pay it back. We do have, and again, most good colleges I would say would have this, we do have a scholarship that we run with the Roundhouse, so that pays the fees for one person, that's twice a year. And then we do have, if you know the name, good on you, we have the Ian Brown bursary scheme. Since the Stone Roses got back together, they have done that because we helped launch their career, so they gave us back that. So we have the Ian Brown bursary scheme, so I usually tell all students to apply to it, and then based on their context and challenges they might face in their lives, they sometimes can get a small bursary towards the cost of the course. And if the Stone Roses tour goes well, hopefully that'll be even better.
Do you have like a directory of all the training providers?
A diary?
Like
a list.
Do you have like a directory of all the private training providers?
Yeah, I mean, if you were going to get a directory, you would go onto the BACS website, okay, the BACS website, and the BACS has there registered all the colleges. That's an excellent question, thank you. Yeah, it's all on the BACS website, and they will tell you all the colleges, and it's alphabetically ordered. BACS, BACS, yeah. They're a very reputable institution. They're currently, Business Information Skills are commissioning a research paper into private providers because they want to know about good practice. I think it's in the light of Cameron's unfortunate work experience company, so I think they're being particularly mindful around it. So they've commissioned BACS to do a piece of research for them on private providers. So BACS do have a complete handle. And if a young person said to you, I want to go to this school that does, theatrical makeup, then you might say, well, contact BACS and see if that school is registered with them. Okay, find out. That would be a good way to know something about the quality of the institution. I also think, again, I hail back to my days, working in the state sector, that I say to a number of young people that come to us, do you want to come for a taster day? Do you want to sit in some of our lessons? All those sorts of things are totally doable, aren't they? Totally easy. Come and spend a day with us, see how you find it, see if you like it. I like to be proud and say, which is true, we have a 0% dropout at SSR. They come, they spend time with us, and they know and find that this is the right place or it's the wrong place. Okay? How are you all feeling about private providers? Is it a sort of wary sector? Is it?
Yeah, what links do you have to employment after college?
Yeah, huge. I've talked to a number of you. In certainly our sector, the days are, for us, we don't train a student for 18 months and then go, right, go and get yourself a job. Go and do a CV and email it out to loads of companies that we can give you and see what happens, because I know full well what will happen. Nothing will happen. So what we do is, as the student is going through the course, we actually bring our industry partners in, and the industry partners will give them some work, some proper professional work programs to work with, so actual industry projects. And our students will generally do those for free. It's not entirely for free, they're using our studio, so they get to use our studios whenever they want. And our studios are what you would find in Pinewood. They would be what you would find at Abbey Road Studios. They are the best studios, which will cost you hundreds of pounds to rent. So our students get them for free, and they will work with our industry partners on some proper professional work. That will contribute towards their portfolio, their show reel. So they're building their show reel, which is their CV, as they're going through the course. We then bring in commercial clients who will pay our students. So we get our students to set themselves up as their own company. We teach them about commercial law. We teach them what they need to do. Okay, so they set themselves up as sort of freelance small companies, and they start to invoice. And we have currently a pot of money. We're working with an organisation where we pledge free studio space, and artists and musicians come down to work with our students. And the organisation has pledged a sum of money that we have, that our students then invoice. So they get used to invoicing and what an invoice looks like and how they do it and how they do it professionally and properly. And it puts them into a mindset of working professionally. So we build that as they go through, so that by the time our students leave us, they're working in the industry. They're already working in it. We help them get their profile on LinkedIn, which is essential, absolutely essential. So for us, it's not about CVs at the end and away you go. It's about developing their profile, their work profile, as they progress through. So our employment rates are phenomenal, huge, yeah. If you go into most big music, live sound companies in the UK, you'll find an SSR student, and they'll be either working at the sort of technical level or they'll be in the management level.
So how do you actually choose your students? By interview?
By interview, and to a certain extent self-selecting, in that our students are usually people, and I'll quote one of our students, I said, why do you think you're here at SSR? Well, because I've got an unhealthy obsession with music. So they're passionate about music, that's really where they come from. They're usually playing an instrument, they're usually been messing about on a bit of software and mixing, making a few tunes, playing in a band, all that sort of thing. And there's passions there, and that's what comes through. And then we sort of talk to them about the level of the course and what they'll need to do. And I suppose I didn't used to believe it until I started working for SSR, that I've seen people who said they couldn't sit through a GCSE science lesson, but who will sit happily through endless lessons on the physics of sound and how sound waves work, because they get it, because how it applies to what they're into. So I can't give you a golden rule, but I know an SSR student when I see one, and I know it's the passion, the creativity that comes through, and then we work with that, and that's how, as a business model, we're successful. We live and die by our students. I've wrapped up.
Okay.
Thank you.